officer that was used to infiltrate the group. We know that in all other cases there is a great reliance on people who act as infiltrators. So you need to be very cautious about what you might say. I'm not saying that you're going to do anything wrong, but you just need to be very cautious, because an increasing feature of all of these prosecutions is the use of informers, people who turn against their brothers, either from within the group or through, as I said, through infiltrators or covert operatives. And it's going to be an increasing feature with the way ASIO is constructed and the way they are now resourced. It happens in normal policing, so we see infiltration occurring in drug syndicates, and we see infiltration occurring in bikie gangs. We know that it's now a common feature of policing, but it's going to be a particularly potent and common feature within counter-terrorism cases. If you have views about what's happening in Indonesia, if you have views about what's happening in Somalia or Palestine or anywhere else, you need to be cautious about the way that you express those views. The laws are very widely cast. You can be a member of a terrorist organisation formally or informally. You don't have to, for instance, contribute to the Sanduk. You don't have to sign. You don't have to pledge allegiance. You don't have to sign up anything. You don't have to wear a military uniform. You can be a member of a terrorist organisation informally. And what happened for the Tamil community was that they were sending money back for humanitarian relief in the conflict in Sri Lanka. It's the Hindus and the Buddhists, really. But it's a cultural conflict, and it's a geographical, territorial conflict. And whatever you might think of either of those religions, it was confined within the borders of Sri Lanka, and the Tamil community were sending money back to support hospitals and orphanages. Same way, for instance, Hamas might support various organisations within the Gaza. It became an offence to provide funding to an organisation, even though the Tamil Tigers were never a proscribed organisation. The government said, in the same way that they did with Nasser Ben Brika, they are a terrorist organisation because of what they think and what they do, or what they intend to do. And so 3 men who were representatives of the Tamil community were prosecuted for funding and providing support and being informal members of the Tamil Tigers because they supported their liberation struggle. After 3 years of litigation in the Supreme Court, the case collapsed because they could not prove that the Tamil Tigers were a terrorist organisation. They were involved in a civil war, and the authorities couldn't prove that these men were involved in any way with any act of terrorism. But what they were convicted of was providing funding to the Tamil Tigers under the United Nations Charter of Terrorism Act. And there are over 1,200 organisations that are listed. You know here in Australia that if you support Hamas, the political wing, that's not an offence. But if you support Hamas, the military wing, that is an offence. They're a proscribed organisation. But if you look at the United Nations Charter of the Financing of Terrorism, as I said, there are 1,200 organisations that have been identified. And you will not know if you're sending money back to Lebanon or to Somalia or wherever, whether any of those organisations are under the Charter of the Financing of Terrorism. You send, and we know this is happening within the Somali community, they are sending money back to support their families, whilst there is very serious civil uprising and civil war. with the Ethiopians occupying at least part of the country, they're sending money back to support their families and to provide humanitarian relief. But if the area is controlled by Al-Shabaab, then that's an offence. And the AFP might come to you, or the ASIO might come to you and might say, we're not interested in prosecuting people who provide financial support for their families or their local mosques or their orphanages or hospitals. That's what they said about the Tamils, and they were prosecuted. So you'll excuse me for being very cautious about the risk of prosecution. My view is that if you wish to send money to support your brothers and sisters back in those areas of conflict, it's much safer to do it either by sending money directly to your family or by sending money through one of the aid agencies like Red Cross. That is the much safer way to do it. Funnily enough, when I was at school, we sent money to an organisation called Green Aid for Ireland, and they supported families, families of IRA suspects that were in prison. We did that through our school. Today we'd be prosecuted. Today we'd be involved in a criminal offence. If any of the events that took place now in Tunisia or Libya or Egypt took place in Australia, if you supported or Syria, any of those causes against repressive regimes, then you will be committing an offence against Australian law, because you are not permitted to support any organisation that's involved in the destabilisation of a sovereign government. And here's the best example. In 2005 or 6, there were Libyan exiles that were prosecuted for trying to raise funds to overthrow the Libyan regime headed by Colonel Gaddafi. And the authorities said, it doesn't matter what we think of the Gaddafi regime, how unpalatable or how unpleasant or how much we might oppose it. Once you send money to support an organisation or a group of people that are trying to destabilise a foreign power, that's an act of terrorism in the UK, and those men were prosecuted and imprisoned. I think now, after the UK's involvement with NATO in their so-called liberation of Libya, they would have been freed, but they've spent years in prison trying to, as I said, overthrow a repressive regime. So that's how dangerous these laws are. We're not like the United States. I'm not a big fan of the United States, as you can gather. But at least the United States has a Bill of Rights where there are some protections. Those Bill of Rights have been important in trying to at least minimise the impact of Guantanamo Bay. The UK has a Human Rights Act. In Australia, we don't have any of those things. We don't have a Human Rights Act. We have no National Bill of Rights. We've got the Parliament, and the Parliament says you express any radical view, then watch out, because we've got the laws to attack you. My view about these things are that when you're approached by ASIO or AFP, be polite, be courteous, but don't talk to them, because they are not your friends. They are there to compile intelligence, and they are there to prosecute people. They're not there to assist you or the community. Assistance to the community can come through other forms, through proper engagement and dialogue, and through other ways. But once they start speaking to you formally or informally, fireside chat, cup of coffee, we're your friends, the antennas ought to go up and say, something's going on here, we better be careful. All right, where's Baha? Okay.
Take a break.
Take a little break if you like, and we can come back with some questions.
whereas now we're really addressing the issues. So please lend us your ears even more than before, and inshallah will benefit. But just on a special note, something that I forgot to mention before is that Robert Snow, when we approached him, we asked him how much it would cost us for this so that we could have the money ready for him. And he said, no, I don't take any money for this because I believe that the Muslim community is being oppressed, so I would like to do this. So, just so you know, that he's not here as a paid consultant or as a paid lawyer. He's here because he believes in what he's actually doing today, and he's dealing with these problems, and he actually is one of those people who's advocating for us during these times. So, all of you make dua, inshallah, that Allah gives you that, and inshallah, Allah will fulfill your role in his plan.
Thank you, brother. I might say my children go to Flemington Primary School. It's just opposite the Racecourse Road and Debney Flats, and there are lots of young Somali and other Muslim children there, and it's important for them to have a good understanding of Islam. I know that the school celebrates Eid, and it also celebrates Christmas, and I'm very pleased that it recognises the importance of both of the great religions of the world. I'm surprised people have been listening so well, because the questions that have been asked are really important. And I might just talk generally about the dissemination of information and literature. You might remember in the Nasser Ben Brika case, some of the material that they relied on included what was said to be jihadist videos. That included, for instance, the beheading of people who were taken as hostages. And even though Ben Brika or none of the boys had any involvement with that, any of those organisations, the fact that they had them in their possession, the authorities said, meant that they subscribed to a jihadist ideology. And so it was used against them, despite our attempt to have it excluded, it was used against them. It's not an offence to download material from the internet of a religious nature where you talk about jihad and the importance of jihad. It's not an offence to do that. It becomes an offence if you use it for some other purpose. So if you use it for military purposes or to talk about destabilisation of the government, they can use that as part of the evidence to say that you're involved in some act or preparation of act of terrorism. But you're permitted to download anything. You can go to any website to talk about the importance of jihad. So that's not an offence. Are you obliged to talk to ASIO when they say we'd like to talk to you? What should you say? You should say, look, I've had some advice now. I don't wish to speak to you. Be polite, be cooperative in the sense of don't be obstructive or antagonistic, but just to say I don't wish to speak to you. I know what my rights are. I don't wish to speak to you. Even if they've made contact in the past, there's no obligation upon you to continue to talk to them. There are a few questions about, for instance, about freedom of speech. Why can't we talk about oppression of Palestinians? Why can't we talk about the crimes that have been committed on them by the Israelis? Why can't we say that that's outrageous and they ought to be brought to account? Why aren't we permitted to say that? Well, you are permitted to say that. There is freedom of speech, but it's limited. It's not it's not unfettered. In other words, you can say what you like so long as you do it within the bounds of the